Hello, my dotlings, and welcome to Madame Tortuga's Lounge, the channel where I speak my piece as a practitioner in America. That is, that's apparently going to be the theme of Madame Tortuga's Lounge because I have found that I have used it as much as an outlet for things I really wanted to speak on and trying to build some sort of greater community. So it has been a little bit like mixed and scattered a bit on the subject matter, but I really do think that the overarching theme is one of social justice, honestly, and making my voice heard as a witch, as a coyote, as whatever the fuck it is I am, a Pisces who's not a particular fan of titles. I have two other channels that are not nearly as intense. One of them is Dottie the Psychic, Dottie the Psychic. And that's more of some of it's a little bit 101. Like, the people who are probably attracted to this channel may not necessarily be attracted to that channel, because this is like where I talk about real things in like magical society as a whole, things I've seen, my thinks and my thoughts and my feels, and that is more about providing resources for my clients who come into my office, so that I'm not just sending them out into the great wide world to go do their own research. I also have put some of my more theatrical stuff on there, including a little bit of drag. Put a pin in that. Right there. Put that pin in there. We've also got Chaos Conjure with Jay and Dottie talking about what it's like to be a pagan in West Virginia. She and I did a video on cryptids. And it's really, really doing well. I have really, really enjoyed that whole experience. We get on and just ramble for about an hour or so about whatever topic. We've done one on graveyard lore. We did one that was right after a rally we'd gone to. So, like, we're not shying away from big subjects, but we're also looking at all the aspects of being pagan in a society. It's a lot of fun. Check it out. I'll try to leave a link in the down below. So I had this video all shot, and I really wanted to talk not necessarily about all the aspects of gatekeeping, because I'm trying to limit how much time I'm staring at this camera, since I'm supposed to be packing to go on the first camping trip I've been on in years, and probably starting at the same time. Which the blood will tie into this, actually, funnily enough. Not so funnily enough. It's actually really shitty. But one of the things I want to talk about is Jasmine Ambrosia just put out a video, The Fall of a Vampire Empire. Reclaiming my things and finding my voice. I'm going to also link this video below so that you can hear in her words what happened and why she's speaking out. And I really kind of have to rethink some of my verbiage when I talk about vampires. I think definitely as the witches community, we tend to conflate vampires with narcissism. And I don't think most of us doing that are even aware that there are actual societies of vampires. I know, like, I was dimly aware because of, like, the National Geographic episode, or if y'all have ever heard of Mad House, it was like a reality show with alts. It was alternative lifestyles. One of them was a witch, and one of them was a naturalist, and one of them was, I think, a voodoo practitioner, and one of them was a vampire. Oh, and one of them was a nudist. A naturalist? He liked to be naked. So that was really the grand total of my exposure to the actual vampire community. Like I said, I do know that in the witching community, and I have actively told people that they have vampiric attachments, and I have conflated people who, and I can definitely see where there's an aware community, people who are aware that they need that energy flow or blood or whatever essence they feel like they need to obtain through other people. And then there's certainly unconscious psychic vampires that are not asking for consent before they're drawing on your energy. I may start referring to them as leeches instead, but I do think, like, I think that is one of the things, like, there is a lot of anti-vampire rhetoric because I don't think that the witch community, the metaphysical community, is aware that there are vampires that are aware of themselves. Because I have certainly seen plenty of people who were feeding off other people's energy in a very, very destructive way. And I have not met a whole lot of people who were actually in the vampire society. So there's a lesson there to be learned. I'm not sure exactly how to change my vocabulary yet. Because I literally just put out a video on my Dottie the Psychic channel about the empath vampire dynamic. And I really do think I may just start to use the term narcissist for, like, unaware vampires. Because it's not a medical term. It is not a formal diagnosis. It is certainly something that we see in, it's not a formal diagnosis, so it's probably a little bit free reign. So I may start using that terminology instead. So Mercury retrograde, all about communication. And I just want to say that it's very brave of her to come out and speak on her experience. And I want to honor that. I had to put out this video anyway. You caught me wanting to reshoot that damn thing anyway. So definitely go check out her video. And I hope that, I hope they see justice. I hope that everything works out for my friend and not for that asshole. Yeah. So, what I really wanted to talk about was the impulse to gatekeep. And it's kind of funny because we'd actually talked about vampires once before, because she's been on this channel. She's one of the shameless self-promotions. She is a traditional witch and actually kind of talks a lot about how she thinks gatekeeping is important and how she thinks that the word witch has a very specific meaning. And I think I very much disagree on that point. Like, we can disagree and definitely still be friends, because you kind of have to. It's definitely worth watching that video that we did together. Watch her video that she put out. I think she put it out, like, today. She sent me that video to help, like, boost it. And I want to be here for that, even while I am disagreeing with her on what a witch really is. Because there are certainly people who I think are witches that I also would not keep counsel with. And I think that a big part, I think the big impetus for gatekeeping is to separate ourselves in some sort of hierarchy where we are above other people in the way that we behave. That's a very long way to put it. So, what am I getting at? First of all, if it's a closed practice, it's a closed practice. And there's culturally closed practices, and then there's, like, traditions. So, like, if it's a closed practice, you don't just steal shit from it. And certainly there are people who do. And I can see the impetus to not want to consider them on your same level. That doesn't mean necessarily that you can take away the word witch. And I think it's very important that we kind of have a little sit down with ourselves and remember witch is still being actively used as a pejorative. A lot of those good Christian folks will still use witch instead of bitch. They'll just use it as a synonym. They'll call somebody a witch. Say that they're evil and they hate them and they're a witch. Like, okay, they can be evil and you can hate them and they can be a witch, but those things are not necessarily related. I do think that I like Kellyanne Maddox's take on this, where she's like, if you call yourself a witch, then you're a witch. And I'm not quite there, personally. I'm just not quite there. I do think that you do need to be some sort of magical practitioner, because I do personally have a problem with a little bit of cosplay. People, you can be in there just fucking shit up, but like, I do think that there should be a certain amount of study. I think you should be doing magic, even if you're doing it poorly. Like, you can be bad at being a witch and still be a witch. You can be new and be a witch. You can not have practice for a very, very long time, but I do think it requires some experience with working with magic. And I know not all practitioners identify as witches. And I absolutely understand. And I think a big part of that is partially because it is still, there's a certain connotation in society about witches being, witch being another word for bitch. There's plenty of reasons why people would not want to be called a witch. A lot of times, like, especially with, like, magicians, Western occultists, they don't want to be called witches because they think witches are this imaginary stereotype, which is also anti-Semitic. Look up the shit about the green nose. Have some existential dread for a treat. As a treat. You get to figure that on your own. Now, that's not what this episode is about. No, this episode is about a TERF that ran into my freaking Discord server and wrecked shop. A little bit. It's a little bit about that. Because she's still a witch. She's bad at it. And she said some really screwed up shit. But she's still a witch. Where was I going with this? I had a point. I am 12 minutes in. I'm not backing up now. And also, I said what I said. Because there's a fair chance that, she's watching this. And if you are, I just want to say, blowing up my server, saying everything you said, and then going into your server and telling everybody that you left my server because you felt uncomfortable was fucking cowardly. Full stop. Not only that, but a drag queen is a drag queen. You are not a part of the drag community. You don't get to separate out which drag queens you hate. Especially when you're telling me you hate all the drag queens that are actually men dressing like women as a stereotype. You're an idiot. You're too stupid to breathe, but you're still a witch. I don't know how you don't drown every time it rains, but you're still a witch. And I hate that for me. I do. Somewhere out there, somebody, and this lady, if she decides to go ham, she's got like literally 10 times the amount of subscribers I do. And it's very realistic to think that she might actually see this video. I'm not going to say her name. I'm not going to cross that line, but it happened. So it's been a little bit of a wild Mercury retrograde. What has that got to do with gatekeeping? Okay, let's talk about the impulse of gatekeeping. So, because I think it really comes down to two really big things. And on one hand, I absolutely get both of these. These are the issues that I think I see when I see gatekeeping. These are the impulses that I see occurring. And certainly these are the same impulses that I have when I want to not associate. I don't want to be at the same title as somebody else who would do these things. And the first one is cosplaying. It feels like, and I just, there are people out there. There's everybody's out there. Somebody's out there doing just about everything. And I have actually met these people, especially after we've had some big media exposure. We all know the Viking Bros. We all know the Viking Bros, where they now think that they're freaking Vikings, even though they have no idea what the Asatru are. They can't even say Yggdrasil. They can't pronounce it. No idea who Balder is. The only reason they know who Thor is because Marvel did a movie about him. You know, I get it. So I get that. My ex-girlfriend had an absolute hate for the craft, because after that, you get all these new witches. People are just new to the craft. And it's hard as somebody who's been experienced to see people just fucking around, because every one of us kind of had to go through that phase to find out what kind of person we are in general. But especially with that movie hitting a certain age range, young women, there are probably still people who watched The Craft and think they're witches without actually ever doing any real research, without ever doing any real study. And that is absolutely infuriating to somebody who has listened to, the Kabbalion. Or, read something other than the Book of Love Spells. I don't want to talk about it. That is a whole subject for another video. Can we talk about it? Let's talk about it. I want to talk about all the, books are not necessarily safer, okay? Everybody says go read a book when it comes to magic, but I remember those books. We're not talking about it. That's not the subject of this video. Whatever. Not all books are good books, okay? I'm just going to say that. You're going to hear about a lot of good books. It's definitely worth watching a review on the books before you go and buy the book. Yeah, brain short circuit. But, and also, and one of these things that, when Jasmine was talking about gatekeeping, that I kind of felt was there really is a big difference between New Age practitioners and witches, that it's so fuzzy, but there's definitely a vibe difference. And a lot of times around here, we kind of call some of what we might call New Age practitioners love and light practitioners. And some of the shit they say is off the hinge. It just is. And I try not to be that way about people's personal beliefs, everybody's allowed to believe whatever belief they choose. And certainly there is a rich culture and interesting storytelling. And storytelling is a live art. It's something we're, as human beings, always doing. And I would not want to squash anybody's imagination ever. Maybe bring it back down to reality sometimes, but and despite the fact that I think it's a little crazy, a lot of these TikTok teens that are God marrying, I mean, technically that seems like it work. It just seems stupid. I'm not touching that one. I just think that just be careful out there when you do magic, and if you believe you're having an effect on the real world, then you probably are going to. And some of that effect on your real world is going into psychosis and screwing your life up. So just be careful with that. That's all I got to say. I do think that there is this, actually it was kind of funny. I watched a video on Aspy Suprimasy. I think that was correct. I have to look up the artist the artist, the YouTuber who did the video on it she's a big autism advocate because she has autism, and you can tell that she's got the flat affect, but she does really, really good work, and I think having her art out there is helpful. But she did a video, and I think it's called Aspy Suprimasy. Basically, and this is something I have seen in the magical community. Yeah, I'm rambling a bit, but who cares? ADHD. We stand mental health, but what we don't stand is ableism dressed up as a spiritual supremacy of mentally divergent people. And I am mentally unwell. I have depression, I have anxiety, I have ADHD. I have been very open about this, and I have used my spirituality to kind of explain and work through some of the bullshit that comes with that. I have often said that people who walk between the worlds rarely fit in just one, and that's kind of my way of stomaching not fitting in this world. That being said, however, I do not believe that makes me superior or inferior to anybody on a spiritual level. What makes me superior or inferior to other people on a spiritual level is a sense of personhood and morality. Well, I won't say morality, ethics. Ethics is a cleaner way to say it, I think. As morality has a fucking tinge to it. It's a little metallic. Oh, no, a little too churchy on there. Got a little of the religious fervor. So I don't think I want to use that word. Then I'm trying to be careful while raging just a little bit. Because I do think that this is a serious issue that I would like to do a real video on. And this is not a real video. This is a product of my delusion of grandeur. That being said, I stand by most of what I say. If I don't, I'll take the video down, right? It's not really how the internet works. The internet never forgets. And neither do I. What were we talking about? Where were I? Where were I? I were lost. So, like, there is this superiority with gatekeeping, and on one hand, I definitely see where somebody who has done so much studying is going to look at somebody who hasn't and be a little offended by that behavior. Like, that being said, if you're a new witch and haven't studied more, but you're actually trying to study, I consider you a witch. If you haven't practiced in a long time, but you still consider yourself a witch because you have practiced, then you're a witch. And I think it's very important for us to kind of take a step back and remember that witch is a pejorative. It's still actively being used as a pejorative. I don't even know if I've already said this because I've re-recorded all like 50 times today, and I'm on a roll, ADHD roll. But paganism, also heathenism, also are still, like, paganism is not so much active anymore being used because of the pagan motorcycle gang. But, like, especially heathen, it's a lot of times when you see heathen, it's people referring to Native American people who aren't Christian. So we've reclaimed that to be, also true, well, not just also true, but the Nordic pantheon. It's another catch-all for all the Nordic pantheon religions, which there are, I guess, a few. But it still gets actively used. Pagan actually does actively be used. I take that back because I remember hearing somebody from the IBF. Is it the IBF? IFB? I don't know. One of them Christian cult motherfuckers. Refers to the pagan masses. Like, there ain't a whole lot of us, but there's enough. And that is more of a religion, I think, a general earth, nature, umbrella of religions. And of course, witch. Everybody's afraid a witch is going to cast a spell on them. I don't have the time or the energy. I might. Depending on the case, I certainly have done my share of return to cinders and the whatnots and the things and stuff we don't talk about on the internet until I'm fucking ready. I'm not going to deep dive in there. I don't have to tell you shit I don't want to. None of your damn business. The sound bites. The sound bites. This is me. This is me raging on the internet. Watch me rage on the internet. So certainly that. And I think that the other massive impulse, and this is the one I want to talk about, this massive impulse that I really have a hard time not leaning into is this morality, this ethics. We want to think that if you cannot maintain a certain level of ethics, that you're not a witch. And I wish it worked that way. I kind of wish it worked that way, because there are certainly people that I would not consider witches that are still out there studying some stuff that does seem a lot new agey. It's not my flavor. And like we tend to call them the Love and Light crew, the live, laugh, leap off a cliff. I actually made a joke about that in my scammers video, but honestly, that's the kind of, they're either super, super disattached from reality and a little judgy about it, or they think that they're right no matter what and are very judgy about it. Why don't you just manifest your happiness? They can still be witches, even if they're bad at it. Even if they're bad people, that doesn't mean they're not witches, unfortunately. There are certainly people who are witches that I want absolutely nothing to do with. Absolutely nothing to do with. Especially the lady who came and blew up my fucking server. Telling me that she didn't like drag queens that wore too much makeup and dressed in a way that was stereotypical women, and talking about how they didn't care if they were harming other people. What fucking actual harm? What actual fucking harm do you think that drag queens are doing? They're not the ones who don't need to be around kids. You're the one who doesn't need to be around kids because you're scary. And rude. Like, and no red flags. No red flags until she got onto my server. And I'm sure if you're down in my comments typing away, kiss my ass. Don't call yourself a leftist. You're not a feminist. You can't be a feminist and tout rhetoric from the right wing. And when you say drag queens are hurting kids without being way more specific, and you say, oh, I'm being specific, you're being specific because you just hate drag queens that dress in woman face? That makes no good goddamn sense. I'm sorry. That's all I got for you. I'm hot. It's been a fucked up retrograde. I ain't gonna tell you their name because I ain't sending them the time of fucking day. That being said, I would also really, really like to shout out somebody else who is in my group, who's really cool and really handled a bad situation in a very professional way, and I want to give props where props are due. I also really like his channel. It's the Wolfsbane Witch. I'm gonna try and leave a link to his channel in the down below, as well as Jasmine's video. And I'm gonna go calm the fuck down before I go on my vacation. I am logging the fuck off, so blow up the comments. I don't give a good goddamn. Safe travel and much profit to you.